Okay, so in the second video, I'm going to show you how to make a graph of your data. And so in the first video, we kind of talked about the experiment, and we talked about the data analysis, how to calculate average, standard deviation, and how to calculate a t-test. And I showed you how to do it without using the data analysis tool pack, but again, you could use the data analysis tool pack as well. Either one is fine. Close that. I'm not sure why that's open. Okay, so here is the same data that we've been working with. And so the first thing I'm going to do before we make our graph is just to reorganize the data so that Excel sees the data appropriately and creates the graph appropriately. Okay, so we want the graph to look right. And so this is the best way to organize our data. And so I'm going to, on the left-hand column of my table that I'm going to create now, I'm going to put 0 minutes. You could also put before. And then I'm going to put 60 minutes, which again, you could also put after. Either is fine. And then at the top of each of my columns, I'm going to put group A. Oh, I'm going to put a space. And remember, here is where you want to make sure that you capitalize things, right? You don't want to put group with a lowercase g. You want to make sure it's capitalized. That way, the titles on your graph on the x and y axes are going to make sense, okay? And they're going to, or actually just here on the x axis, sorry, the labels will look appropriate, okay? So group B and then group C. We'll talk about titles when we get to the actual graph. And so here I'm just going to copy my average data. And so again, what I'm going to be graphing is the average initial and average final weight for the cells in groups A, B, and C. And so I'm going to just take my calculations that I did up here in this column, and I'm just going to transfer them down here. Again, just reorganizing my data so that Excel makes the graph appropriately. And so for group A, my initial weight, the average was 15.34, and my end weight was 15.19. And for group B, my average initial weight was 16.15, and my end weight was 6.73, so there was a substantial loss. And for group C, 15.28, and my end weight was 26.31. So again, a substantial gain. Okay, so I've reorganized my data, and so now I'm going to tell Excel, let's graph this data here that I have highlighted. And so I highlighted, and I'm going to go up to Insert, just like usual, like we've been doing. I'm going to select my bar graph, and I'm going to select the cluster column. And there we go. Looks beautiful. So we have our group A data clustered together, separated from our group B data, which again is clustered and separated from our group C data. We have blue representing our before and orange representing our after data, so our 0 minutes and our 60 minutes. So we got this nice little legend here. And I'll actually move the whole thing, but I want to grab just this legend. And I'm going to, come on, just the legend. There we go. Bring the legend up here to the top. I want to keep that. My chart title, you could either delete this or I like to move this down. I'm going to use that for my figure caption. I'm going to bring this whole thing just up a little bit. Again, that'll give me room for my figure legend. And so, or not my figure legend, my figure description, really, caption. So figure 1, and this is where you're going to write a sentence or two talking about what's shown, not analyzing the data, but just telling me what's here in this graph. What else do we have to do to make this professional? So we need to get rid of the grid line. So I clicked on the plus, which brings up this box of chart elements. I'm going to get rid of the grid lines. I'm going to keep the legend. So the legend here is the 0 and 60 minutes. It tells you the colors. I'm going to add axes titles. Okay. So because I did that, I gotta just move this over a little bit. Yeah. And so I'm going to let you figure out what you're labeling them. Okay. Remember, your y-axis is your dependent variable. It's what you measured, and tell me units. Okay. And then your x-axis is your independent variable. And so again, I'll let you guys label those. I'm also not going to tell you what to write for a caption. Okay, you guys can figure that out. The one last thing that you need to add are the error bars. And so again, this is the trickiest part as usual. It's a little bit trickier this time because we have this before and after data. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my blue bar first. Notice that you can click on any of the blue bars, but the blue bars become highlighted and the orange bars are not. And so what I'm saying is we're going to put the standard deviation on these bars first. And so you're going to go up to plus, and you're going to go to error bars, and you're going to click the arrow to the right as usual. Click more options, and let me move my video so you can see this. Same dialog box as usual. I'm going to select custom, and I'm going to click on specify value. And so this is the same dialog box that we've been seeing. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky, and there's a couple of ways that you can do this. We could have organized our standard deviation a little bit better, but this is fine. So for our up value, we need to tell Excel for our times 0 for group A, B, and C what the standard deviation going up and what it's going to be down. So for my up value, I'm just going to select the group A standard deviation for times 0. So this is this first number here. And then because my data is not organized perfectly, I need to put a comma and then select group B and then a comma and select my standard deviation for group C, all for times 0. So that's the up. And now for the down value, so how far down from the mean, same thing, same numbers. So again, you select group A, B, and C, put a comma between each of them. I should be able to hit OK, and there, those look good. Very small deviations, but each one has one. For my second set of data, so the orange, the 60-minute, again, I need to click on one of the orange bars. Any one of them will work. I'm going to go to the plus. I'm going to go to error bars. Click on the arrow to the right. Click on more options, custom, specify value. So I'm at that same message, that same dialog box. So again, I need to tell Excel how far up and how far down for each of these. So same idea. I'm going to click on the first box and I'm going to say, okay, Excel, I want you to take the standard deviation for group A, 60 minutes, comma, the standard deviation for group B, 60 minutes, comma, and the standard deviation for group C, 60 minutes. Okay, so I selected all three. And then I have to do the same thing again for my down value, my negative value. So group A, 60 minutes, comma, group B, 60 minutes, comma, and group C, 60 minutes. So I just selected the same three values for my positive error bar and for my negative value. And I'm going to click OK. And there, that looks good. So the only thing I need to move here is my legend because it's kind of overlapping with that error bar. And you can kind of check the error bars and make sure that they make sense. So you can see for group C, I have an error bar of about 2. Okay, so that looks good. And for group B, my error bar for my 60 minutes is it's much smaller. It's only 0.5. And so you can see how the size of this is much smaller. Okay. All right, so that is how you make a graph. The graph looks pretty good, except for, again, my axes, X and Y axis need titles, and my figure needs a caption. Okay. So that is it for this video. So you should know how to calculate average, standard deviation, and do a t-test, and how to make a graph. Those are all things that need to go in the results section of this Osmosis report.